Hello and welcome to Clydebridge station, where today we're going to be reviewing two new arrivals on the layout. Both are class 47s and both have come from the same seller, Mike Wellesby on eBay, and I can recommend him to you straight away. Both have got links to Scotland, this one more obvious than the other one, and both machines are very excellent locomotives. Now in this video I won't be able to give you a running session with them because I'm doing some engineering work at the moment on platforms 5 and 6, but there'll be a short running session at the end of the June update, and I'll make sure that these two particular locomotives will be featuring in that. So without further ado, let me get the locomotive in position and we'll talk about the first of the two, 47706. A lot of people will be familiar with this first machine here, 47706. It's a limited edition model by Kernow, but before I go into the whole story of this particular Bachmann model, I just want to give a background to the use of push-pull operation in Scotland. David Watson has done a video reviewing this machine in 2018, and I'll pop the link in the top right hand corner now for you to have a look at, but I just want to point out there's a couple of errors that he's made in that. Not intentional, I must add, but there's a couple of errors he's made about the real machine, and I'll correct them as I go through. Push-pull operation between Edinburgh, Waverley and Glasgow Queen Street began in 1971 when the Scottish region of BR used class 27 locomotives, one at each end of a rake of 6 Mark IIs. The Scottish region had indeed hoped to use class 47s or class 50s, but the regions that operated those machines at the time, namely the Western region and London Midland region, weren't at all happy about giving those locomotives up for a much shorter internal use. So the class 27s had to work flat out, and this caused some reliability issues at times. The coming of the high-speed train in the 1970s, it was first introduced to the Western region in 1976, saw the remaining diesel hydraulic locomotives, the class 52s, withdrawn. But attention also saw some class 47s getting made surplus, and the introduction of class 56s onto some freight workings, along with the decline of some industries, allowed some class 47s to be made surplus, and these were getting converted to electric train supply. With some surplus 47s becoming available, the decision was made to approach once again the BR board, and the Scottish region were now given the authority to convert 12 class 47/4s to 47/7s, and this process began in 1979. 47701 St Andrew, formerly D1932, was of course the first one, and the plan was now that one locomotive would be used with a rake of Mark III coaches or Mark II coaches with a Mark II F BSO converted to a DBSO, from a brake standard open to a driving brake standard open. These were converted to 47/7s by using a new type of push-pull operation, which used just the coach lighting jumpers on the carriages, and when I show you the locomotive in detail we'll actually point out the jumper cables to you, but they're located on the nose ends. By using the coach lighting jumpers, it meant that any coach could be used in the formation. I have seen footage of sleeper cars in a Scotrail Express formation being worked to Glasgow for maintenance. This also therefore had the advantage of meaning that changeovers of coaches could be done rather quickly. A limitation of the 1971 push-pull operation was that it used Blue Star multiple working. This had to be employed throughout the coaches, meaning only certain coaches could be used. By using just the one locomotive, it obviously meant that they were saving on fuel as well in that essence, and these machines were designed for the sort of operations. This particular machine was one of the 1979 conversions, and they were used not only on Edinburgh-Glasgow but also Glasgow to Aberdeen services. As part of the conversion, they were fitted with long-range fuel tanks, and they were also fitted with air pipes on the other side of the machine. They're not visible on here, but I'll turn the loco around later on and let you have a look at that, associated with the push-pull system. Now, that push-pull system has sometimes been referred to as time division multiplex, and whilst it used a time division multiplexing system, it's not the GEC Plessy TDM system that was employed on the AC electrics on the East Coast Main Line and the West Coast Main Line, and latterly to some RES 47/7s. Instead, it used a railway clearinghouse jumper system developed by BREL, and it was unique to these 16 Class 47/7s that were eventually produced. The locomotives were allocated to Haymarket initially, and in 1985 a further 4 were converted when the Edinburgh to Aberdeen service went over to push-pull operation, and this resulted in more DBSOs being converted as well. In the end, there were 13 DBSOs and 16 locomotives to cover 11 diagrams. (47706) itself was, like all the others, allocated to Haymarket, but in 1988, as Haymarket was becoming a sprinter depot, they were all moved en masse to Eastfield for their regular maintenance, although they did get outbased overnight at the likes of Aberdeen and Edinburgh Haymarket Depot as well. 47706 itself was the first 47/7 to be denamed. Many people believe that was 47714, more of which in a minute. But in 1986, this locomotive lost its name Strathclyde when 37405 was named Strathclyde Region, and this locomotive therefore carried on unnamed for the rest of its career. I actually had 47706 for Shovage between Edinburgh, Waverley and Kirkcaldy in in September 1988, returning from a family holiday. I say Shovage because she was actually propelling the train with the DBSO leading. The first 47/7 I had for Shovage. The Scotrail Express push-pull sets, although mainly used on the Edinburgh-Aberdeen-Glasgow-Aberdeen triangle, did occasionally find use elsewhere, and in 1989, after the Fife Circle service was started, we were at Burnt Island one day for a day out, and you can imagine my surprise that for our train home later that afternoon, it was not a Class 150/2 Sprinter but a push-pull set with 47702 St Cuthbert propelling. BR's provincial sector's plans for the long-distance express services that it ran involved the replacement of these machines by Class 158 Express Sprinters in 1989, and the original plan had been in May 1989 that the Express Sprinters would be getting introduced and all these would be getting transferred away. The Express Sprinter 158s, as we know, were rather much delayed, but nevertheless in March 1989 47714 Grampian Region was denamed, sent to Stratford for overhaul, and was transferred, as was the plan, to Network South East, with 47705 Lothian being denamed and sent down to Stratford Major Depot for overhaul and repainting for Network South East not long afterwards. The other 14 47/7s carried on with the 11 diagrams until the Express Sprinters arrived in late 1990. Many people believe that all 16 47/7s went to Network South East initially, but that's not the case. Only 11 did. The other 5, which include this one, and 47703, 704, 712 and 717 were transferred to the parcels sector. In 1991, late 1991, motive power shortages with the continuing unreliability of the Class 50s between Waterloo and Exeter saw the other 5 47/7s that parcels had, by now Rail Express systems, being sent on loan after an approach by Network South East to the British Railways Board to Network South East, and they would later gain NSE flashes, which you can just see there. We'll actually get a close look at that in a few minutes. After the Class 159s took over the Waterloo to Exeter service and the 165s took over the Paddington to Oxford services, these machines were all transferred away, and this one was returned to the parcel sector. I should actually add as well that this particular machine kept its Scotrail branding initially when it transferred to parcels in 1990. I'll put it in the top right hand corner now for you, a video showing it at King's Cross in 1991 getting ready to do a parcels service, and I'll tell you, the Scotrail branding must have turned a few heads at London King's Cross. This locomotive became a celebrity because it was the last Class 47/7 in BR days to carry the blue striped Scotrail livery, or what was left of it by then, and it never ever got repainted after its 1985 repaint. The only work done to it was the blacking out of the Scotrail branding and the BR emblem in 1991. It didn't survive too much longer as well. It was withdrawn in May 1995 and cut up by C.J. Phillips in August of 1995, so it didn't really last much longer after its days on Network South East finished. Just visible to the left of the fuelling point are the air pipes that were associated with the BREL RCH push-pull system. These were never removed when the push-pull system was finished, and as I just move these coaches back in, it didn't actually affect the use of the locomotives as conventional locomotives. The locomotive itself is presented in extremely well condition. It gives you an indication of just how manky this machine was and why it became a celebrity. I mean, I'm quite surprised that Rail Express systems even allowed it to be in such a condition, but enthusiasts weren't bothered about it. It was a very popular machine. It's got the cab roof aerials on it, and the jumper cables for the push-pull operation are picked out in black, which is actually correct. The earlier Bachmann locomotives, such as 708 and 701, which have both have these picked out in orange jumper cables, whereas 715 has it picked out in black. But what they've also done here is the actual covers that cover over the holes where the push-pull cables go into are also black. These would have actually been orange, and certainly photos I've seen of them show them as orange, but to be honest with you, the locomotive was in such a mucky state that I wouldn't be surprised if they actually were black at times. The windscreen wipers markings are shown there where it's been cleaned. I mean, the locomotive would have needed a damn good clean in real life. I've had to remove the buffer beam details. I need obviously couplings at both ends with me having a terminal layout, but the roof grime on the yellow top of the cab is absolutely realistic, and it's got the NSE flashes in the middle of the head code box, which again is what NSE done when these locomotives were on loan to them. Coming around to this side, the paintwork on the other side of the locomotive is similar but not exactly the same, but this gives you an indication of just how bad it was. I don't know how well the camera can pick it up, but the Bachmann have correctly shown some of the grey paintwork here to be a lighter shade of grey, another showing how badly faded and peeling it was. The red warning stripe is visible in some places, covered in muck in others, and just chipped off badly. It's got the NEC flash there below the cab windows. Well, what can you say about the blue stripe? But again, this was absolutely accurate. And it's also got the Scotty dog and the Haymarket symbol as well. The lighter shade of grey towards the bottom, you can see it's starting to peel off as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, this was actually a reliable machine. I've been told of a couple of people who worked for parcel sector that it was a reliable machine. So I suppose that was one thing that went for it. It had no issues, but certainly didn't portray a very good public image for either Network South East or Rail Express Systems to have a locomotive in that sort of condition externally. You can also see just on here again the muck on the cab roof here, and if I just bring you back along to here as well, I don't know how well you can see that, but they've actually even weathered the bogies. This is actually an unusual loco for my layout because all my other locomotives are pristine and I intend to keep them that way. I've got a couple of carriages on the layout that are weathered, but I've never had a weathered locomotive before. So for Bachmann to actually come out and bring this out, and for Kernow Model Centre, who commissioned it to bring it out, it's a really good success story for them. It was a highly sought after engine, and I know that David Watson has his on the Dean Park Station layout. It was very highly sought after, and I'm very privileged to actually have one of these now on the layout. She won't be working the push-pull train obviously, but she will be working the parcels trains and occasionally a Scottish internal service. But I'll also get her to, along with the rail freight locomotives that I have and 47346, she'll be able to propel the track cleaning coach as well. So that's 47706. Well, let's get on to the other locomotive that I've got. I've left 47706 in the siding here because it provides a good contrast to this next machine. And this is actually a renumbering. You'll be familiar with 47832 Tamar, which I have on the layout occasionally. Well, this is actually a 47832 has been renumbered by Mike Wellesby as 47831 Bolton Wanderer. I must confess, as a kid growing up, I had a little soft spot for a couple of locos that I saw in Motive Power Monthly, and this is one of these locomotives I had a soft spot for. 47831 Bolton Wanderer. The real 47831 started off as 47563 Women's Guild. During the ETS conversion programme in the 1980s, which was completed in 1987, 47551 and 2 and 47650 to 65 were fitted with long-range fuel tanks, identical to what was in 47706 and the other Scotrail push-pulls. One advantage of the long-range fuel tanks was that it negated the need to change locomotives en route if it was going to be a diesel-hauled train throughout. And this meant that, for instance, a Class 47 with long-range fuel tanks could work from London to Edinburgh on its own without any problem. And indeed it could also work from, say, London to Penzance with no problem at all. The 47/8 subclass was referred to still by BR as 47/4s, and it came into being in 1989. And it was for the locomotives that were equipped with long-range fuel tanks. However, there were other locomotives that were later converted to this, and two of them are actually on the layout here, 47834 and 47835. They didn't get equipped with long-range fuel tanks at ETS conversion, but they were later given them and renumbered from 47609 and 47620. This particular example has an interesting history. It was named Women's Guild whilst allocated to Inverness depot and Eastfield depot in Glasgow, which is where the Scottish link comes in. The introduction of Class 156 Super Sprinters onto the Inverness Aberdeen service resulted in this machine getting sent down to Crew Works to be converted to a 47-8. I'll refer to it as that just for completeness purposes. And it became 47831. Its Women's Guild nameplates were removed at the time, and there was a plan to name 47803 in 1989 Bolton Wanderer to publicise Intercity now serving Bolton Town Station. But 47803 wasn't available, and it was still in works to get repainted into the Swallow livery. It was still carrying executive livery, so it got the nameplates from 47563 Women's Guild, and this locomotive ended up being chosen as a last minute replacement to be named Bolton Wanderer. And if you've understood that bit about the naming, then I haven't explained it properly. This locomotive later on gained the Swallow livery, just got the unbranded Intercity livery here, but later on gained the Intercity Swallow branding. But it looks nothing like this nowadays, because it is actually still survives, but it doesn't sound and look like this. It's a Class 57 now. Mike Wellesby has done a tremendous job on 47831 here. We've got etched nameplates in exactly the correct position as they were for its naming ceremony in 1989. And the number is absolutely correct for size as well. It's identical, the number, in terms of size to 47832. And you wouldn't think it had been a renumbering. The only difference between this one and the real 47831 is at one end of the loco, the head code box is actually, the panel and plating is actually, protruding out slightly. It's not flush, but it's not inset. But I can live with that change here. It's not as if it's that noticeable a change. One other thing about this particular locomotive that is that it is correctly numbered, correctly carrying no branding on its nameplate, on its body side for Intercity. It wasn't until the early 1990s that it actually gained it, so this locomotive does indeed match the period of time that I'm modelling. The locomotive is the same on both sides, and it actually is a tremendous runner. It's in pristine condition, as you can see here, and provides a great contrast with 47706 behind. The buffers are painted in black. They were silver for the ceremony and they're the sprung type, whereas on 47706 they're a sort of grey colour. And it's got the cab roof aerial as well, another correct feature for the locomotive. So that's your two new arrivals here, bringing the total number of Class 47s on Clydebridge station to 24. And where am I storing some of these locomotives? Well, I've had them previously under the layout, but I've also now built a shelf here, and I've got 4 on at the moment, and I'm going to acquire more brackets in the next couple of weeks and use some more spare wafer board, paint it grey and install it at the other side so I can put a few more locos in there as well, and that'll help solve my storage problems. For the record, it's 832 that's at the very back there, and then 835, 550 over there, and 346. It's the 4 locomotives you see on that shelf. Now, as I say already, at the time that I'm filming this in the middle of May, I'm still doing some engineering work, as it were, resurfacing platforms 5 and 6. And so I've had to take some of the stuff off the platforms that's lying on the track at platform 6, so I won't be able to do a proper running session with them at the moment, but I have tested both machines into platform 5 and I've identified that the track needs another clean, so 47706 will get a shot at propelling the track cleaning wagon one day. 47706 is not prestigious enough to allow it to haul the charter stock, and it certainly is not good external condition to be allowed on front line stock except empty stock workings. But it will occasionally work local internal Scotrail services, but more often it will be working the parcels service that I'll run. Now, have you got a 47706 on your layout? If you have, let me know what you think of it. I think it's a cracking machine. It really looks the part, and it's a great effort that's been put into the commissioning by Kernow and Bachmann. And as I say, it's a celebrity machine for the wrong reasons, but a celebrity nonetheless. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please any comments or queries in the comments box below, and keep tuned to this channel, because in June we'll see the June update where I'm continuing on with the work on resurfacing platforms 5 and 6, installing a couple of new bits of equipment onto these platforms, and also installing a new sign to hide the join between the street view images of the car park up at the retail park area. So until then, please, whatever you're doing, do take care of yourselves, won't you, and enjoy your layouts, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye for now.